Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Talking Stick. As always, I'm Jess, and I am here to host this little talk that we're having tonight. Welcome back, anyone who is joining us, as this is the fifth episode. And anyone who's here live right now, I really appreciate you. Feel free to comment. I'll do my best. This episode is actually super intriguing, and I'm so excited. So forgive me if I'm a little bit all over the place because it's super complex. And we will likely actually return for multiple parts of this because I can only do a little bit at a time because I'm not trying to sit here for hours and have everyone watch like 20 minutes and bail. So I'm trying to keep them into like these little digestible snippets. And so here we go. Today we are going to talk one of my favorite, and through the story, you'll hear my personal experience that sort of ties me to this subject. Anyone who knows me knows that I am so passionate about the tribal cultures on our planet uh, and the native cultures of the North American and Americas here on this side of the world, as well as I said before, the Egyptians. Love the Egyptians. So here we go, star peoples and the native cultures. Now, I think it's really interesting, and I don't know how many of you actually are privy to this, but many of the tribal cultures on planet Earth consider themselves star beings. So they in their oral culture, which I find, probably more, you know, actually valid than what we consider history because that's always changing and they really don't have any idea what human history, you know, is. So it's up to us to just kind of do research and think logically, and creatively because it is a creation story, right? So let's go here. So I have a little note, so forgive me for looking up, but it's so much information. I just want to make sure I'm getting it right here. But this thought process began for me when I read this article about the Grand Canyon. Now, first of all, they tell us that there's a theoretic that, Asian tribal humans actually traversed the land bridge and came down through Canada to settle in North America as our initial native cultures. Um, so, I mean, logically, I think it comes from the South, you know, and but if you really look at the genetic qualities and the spiritual beliefs and practices of the North American tribes, you'll see that they have some pretty succinct, ties or lines drawn to the Egyptians. So this is something I've always just thought logically that like basically it's earth and star based cultures that utilize uh, natural natural world around them to literally worship the natural world around them and symbolically, right? So if you live in the desert, it's gonna be slightly different than if you live in Mississippi or wherever. So I think that is one of the primary reasons for the differences between the tribes. Um, in a lot of ways, not saying all tribal cultures are relatable, but in my opinion, the facial features and the depicted, you know, skin tones, and hair, everything just seems to be very similar to the Egyptians, in a lot of ways. So I've always in my mind sort of thought, now this article, okay, so the Smithsonian will deny this, but one of their employees from the early 1900s, actually 1909, an explorer named G.E. Kincaid, and you know his homie who was with him, S.A. Jordan, they actually came upon an entrance into the Grand Canyon that went underground and spanned miles and actually contains Egyptian and Oriental, old Oriental at the time, of course, artifacts and symbology and petroglyph. And so, they actually, ran back to the Smithsonian, yo, this is going down. So it's said that when they returned to explore, that it was destroyed and they couldn't explore it any longer. And of course, now the Smithsonian completely denies this as some sort of myth or yellow journalism of the early 1900s. And so, it's always something that's kind of stuck in my head. Logically, okay, let's just be real. We don't even know how the pyramids were built today. We seriously can't bring it down. And if you've ever looked into it, like the mathematical equations of like the sizes of the pyramids and each block or whatever, I mean, there's just all this information. Please look into it if you're interested, because I'm not going to try to go there. But there's just some really amazing knowledge of the stars, as well as, this ability, this architectural ability to not only build these buildings, but then have them all have, you know, a relationship to distances, to each the planets. And, I don't know, look into it. Look into like the construction of the pyramids in relationship to distance to the stars and things like that, because there is a relationship. Anyhow, if they can do these things, they had boats. They did. They had boats. I mean, the Vikings had boats. I mean, it's just not that complex. I mean, comparatively to a pyramid. So I think it's very logical. I mean, I really don't think Columbus or, any of the aforementioned or any of the historically mentioned like explorers were the first people to come to this space here in the Americas. So, in my opinion, there's a really logical connection to, perhaps the Egyptians and their ancient, and I mean, there's just so many different ancient, cultures that I'm sure had boats. Just saying. So, with that being said, I had a personal experience where I have a good friend of mine actually invited me to bring some winter supplies a few years ago to the Hopi reservation in Arizona. And of course, I live in the California desert near Joshua Tree. So it's just kind of a hop, skip, and a jump over. And of course, I was all in because, yeah, anybody who's met me knows I'm all in. I've visited quite a few of the reservations, and that's actually going to be a future topic. I won't give you too much information, but I have some serious issues with how we as a culture are treating these people on our earth. I mean, in our country. And I really think it's up to us, since the government apparently isn't really going to take responsibility for what was done to them. We really need to. So that's a whole nother episode that I'll bring in soon enough. But anyhow, we were supposed to go drop these supplies off to just, one of the Hopi tribe members that was related to, that my friend knew. And when we arrived, it was on 11/11 actually, so that's one of the reasons I'm kind of thinking about this right now. But when we arrived, the person we were supposed to meet, he was not there. So he told us to go to, he gave us the names of these other tribal members to bring the supplies to. And so, we show up and we got all this stuff and we go in, we're hanging. And within a reasonable amount of time, we are informed that we are in the presence, or, in the company of one of the spiritual, the Blue Kachina chief to the star portal for the Hopi. And I mean, you would have thought I was meeting like, John Lennon or something. I mean, in my mind, I was like, oh, how blessed is this? Oh my goodness. And so I didn't really ask many questions. I really believe he was, the Hopi are quite small people, and he joked about this. I mean, consistently, he was hilarious. He was probably the only true Buddha energy that I've ever really been around. He was probably like up to about here on me, around my shoulder area. And So anyhow, he was telling stories, because at this point in time in the Hopi prophecy, people will be coming to them, and they are now allowed to share their history. So in the past, that was actually a really sacred and held close oral history, because they do believe that they came from the Pleiadian, that they're direct descendants of the Pleiades and the Pleiadians, and the blue star, in their legends, or in their oral history. I don't want to call it legend because that somehow discounts it. I would actually call it oral history. There is some very big significance to the blue star appearing, and the fifth emergence, which will be the final emergence of humanity from a great cataclysm that happens on Earth. Now, this has already happened multiple times. And so when he was telling me the stories, he was talking to me about taking us to Oribe, which is the oldest constantly inhabited city or civilization space known, and it was established in, I think it was 1050, and still is inhabited. So that's actually pretty cool. So he was talking about that, but he began to talk about the Great Flood, that I guess would be referred to as maybe Noah's Ark for a lot of people, and it is referred to in a few different cultures. There are lots of stories, flood stories. So the one that the Hopi believes, or the one that they tell, is that they've actually been led. There were ice and fire. I mean, previous cataclysmic events that they survived, being guided by stars, um, and basically they ended up meeting up with these ant people, and the ant people led them underground and taught them how to survive underground, um, and they then reemerged once it was safe to reseed the planet, for the current world we live in. Now, when the blue star, you know, like appears in the sky, which is supposed to be Sirius, and the blue Kachina chief, who I'm speaking of, removes his mask, and shows the children during ceremony, then at that point, that will signify the beginning of the fifth emergence. And at the fifth emergence, the Hopi believe that they will go home on the mothership. Now, way before we ever had any real modern concepts of this, there were ancient people, including the Egyptians, I mean, all over the world. We're going to cover a few today, who really believe that they were brought here by motherships. So when he told me this story, I think of this article I just mentioned, right? So he's telling me about this underground, and that they still have access. And as chief, he's allowed to go to these places, and was willing to bring us. We didn't really have time. I'm hoping, he's honestly one of the most favorite people I've ever met. And I've met a lot of people, um, that are considered, celebrity or whatever. And no one has come anywhere near impressing me, except, like he did. Except for maybe the Lakota children. They were very impressive and cute and very pure. But anyhow, so he's telling me this story, and I asked him one question. I really wanted to hear what he had to say to me on his own accord and intuition. And so once he told me this story, I said, so does the Hopi have history with the Egyptians? And he looked at me and said, yes, and the Tibetans. Boom! Boom. I was like, oh, okay, there's the ancient Oriental. So those things being underground, and much of the Grand Canyon being named, you know, like Egyptian names, Isis and Ra, Horus. And then I think there's even some Buddhist references. I mean, this just, kink. So to me, I believe it. I believe that, there's much, much more to this than we're being told. So, the ant people. Now, this is where connections begin to happen in my mind. And so, of course, this is all theoretic. So please do not I'm not trying to say this is exactly what is real. Okay. This is just me going, we don't know what's real. And here's some logic here. And I already made that connection, with the chief and, and the Egyptians and the Tibetans. So, let's talk more about the ant people. In Hopi language, Anu means ant and Naki means friends. So, any of you who are familiar with the Sumerian history, which Sumeria used to be Iraq, and so it's actually Middle East, but it's considered by current science and history to be sort of the cradle of civilization, I suppose, to some schools of thought. And so it's super interesting to me because, the Anunnaki also have succinct history with otherworldly beings, aliens, whatever you want to call them. So we're starting to kind of see something here. And I mean, it's just like, so in wherever we talk about ant people, they're very much, they very much are here to teach the humans, or, the current, I don't know if they're always human, if they're always what we are now, or, the people on planet Earth, about their own planet and the resources here and how to be resourceful and survive and, sort of utilize what Earth has to offer to survive. So, there are the Sumerian gods in Enlil and Enki. Now we can take it even further, because Egypt also had ant, people petroglyphs. Now there are petroglyphs all over the world, and I've gotten a chance. Now, if anyone has the opportunity and is in, I was coming back from Utah, and at Zion, and we stopped outside of Vegas at this state park called Valley of Fire. And you can just go in. It's not at all protected, but they have petroglyphs that are very, very relatable to what is in the Grand Canyon, that are from the Navajo and the Hopi, and all over the world as well. And there's some very distinct themes, including this depiction of like ant people with these antennae and like very small waists and stuff. And from what I understand, they weren't actually called ant people, based on exactly how they looked. They were small, they were supposedly small people, but they operated similar to ants, going underground and coming out. And so even the Hopi Kivas, and the way that the prayer system and everything works for them, honors this idea and this, that they were saved by the ant people. But anyway, in Egypt, let's see, Akhenaten, circa 1351 to 1334 BC, actually, is depicted very much so in the depictions as looking like these ant people, depictions. But it goes even further here, because I just want to bring this in some way circular, where I was talking earlier about the boats. And so Enlil and Enki, basically created humans. I guess there's this idea that they mixed with the humans on Earth, their own otherworldly genetics, to create like a sort of slave race to excavate gold from Africa. So that's kind of interesting. And I mean, okay. But basically, I don't know who's heard of the Egyptian god Thoth or Thoth. He's actually thought to be Enki's son. And Enki and Thoth are supposed to have built Atlantis. Now, I suggest you look up. Now, Thoth is actually thrice born. So his legend is that he has come 3 times in 3 different human vehicles to this earth. Once as Thoth, once as Quetzalcoatl from the South American, Mesoamerican history, and as well as Hermes from the Greek. And now all these cultures also have, you know, suggestion of otherworldly or alien beings. So I find this to be just so fascinating, right? And so basically, there is this connection, that basically Thoth was ordered to leave. I mean, I don't know what exactly, I'd have to read the entire legend, but it was like due to some disagreement with his brother or whatever. But he was ordered to leave Egypt or that area. So it's thought that he then, because the Olmecs, okay, so the Olmecs in South America are like a dark skinned race of very large people. They don't even know what the heck happened or where these people came from or what, where they went either, from whence they came or where they went. We don't know. So it's all sort of assumed. They don't even know exactly when they were there, but there's, some different theories. But the one that I sort of feel partial to is that when Thoth left Egypt, he actually went to South America and brought with him his followers, which were a mix of people, including the Olmecs, right? So this is so fascinating. And again, talking about what? Egyptians crossing the sea way before Columbus. So and so it's like, and then, also, I can never get this. I'm just gonna be honest. I have heard this word. I learned about this place when I was in art school, and it's like Tehulacan or Tehutacan. But you guys know what I'm talking about. It's the serpent, the building, the sacred site where the serpent, based on the positioning of the sun, actually goes up the building. And you know so yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about in South America. I'm sorry, I can never say that word. I don't know what it is about that word, so I've heard it many times and can't say it. But anyhow, there's a relationship between they say that was actually built in reference to Atlantis. So ties like Thoth and Quetzalcoatl in again, right? So, I mean, to me, I just find this super, super fascinating. I'd love to talk, in like greater depth about it with everyone. But, the Hopi is, to me, the closest that I can get, to this information and to it firsthand. And, it very, very amazing to kind of fall in the lap of the chief to the star portal. The Hopi have been there for thousands of years, and they were the Anasazi, which we learned about in school, are their ancestral lineage. So they're ancient and they've been here for a long time. And, they don't treat history the same way we do. The Egyptian history is a little bit sketch. We don't really know. We don't know what that's all about. It doesn't even seem like the Egyptians really know exactly what happened or what went down, how it all was built and what was going down. But same with, the Aztecs and the Mayans and all this. It's still, we're still learning, and we're still really, bringing it all together. And hopefully soon enough we will get, a lot more clues. But as far as I'm concerned, the oral history of Native cultures is some of the most accountable history we can really access. It's held sacred, and it's passed down, for accuracy. there's like a holder of the oral history, in every generation. And so to me, it's really worth looking into, because this is only a few. I'm just tying these three together that seem to have relationships. And I mean, there's relativity as to whether any of this is even real. These gods are just, some historians try to say that it's just personification of earth events that people have given a, a deity personification to explain, to give these myths and stories to children to explain the world, right? But I don't know. I don't know if that's really true. I really tend to believe, I mean, if the Hopi have been talking about it for thousands of years, coming, and they actually believe that they're here to just host us to the fifth emergence, um, which is apparently up and coming, where we're going to have another, cataclysmic event. The Hopi prophecy has been very clear, and it looks as though we're pretty much at the end game. Even so that younger people with hair like theirs, long hair, will come to learn the ways of the Hopi and be there. And I just think that's pretty cool, that that's actually happening. I actually am, did it myself. So, the fact is that I believe them. And I don't think there's any reason. I think there's more of a reason to question, modern history and our depictions of that than the ancient history. If we could just bring into reverence these humans and stop, sort of, now please don't take any, offense to this, because I think the word can be accurately used. And this is not to negate in any other use of this word or the suffering that has happened in the past. But the Holocaust of our native tribes, putting them in these, horrible pieces of land that literally have no value. It's like they didn't expect them to survive. And why is, not only are we doing this, but there's lots of civilized, nations that almost make an overt attempt to extinguish the tribal cultures. And is that because they know what the lies are, that if we were to actually sink in and bring them exalted as they should be, and then we start drawing lines between them, and that they all think we're coming from the Pleiades or Sirius, I mean, there's many more. And then would we start to question? And then would, what would happen, and what institutions and political structures would fall? Just saying. So, well, I think I've gone off. I think that's kind of good. I'd like to keep it around 30 minutes, unless I have somebody talking with me and bringing different points to the table. So yeah, that's this subject. I mean, like I said, I would love to go to town. Like I could go to town just on native cultures alone. And so I'm really interested in what you guys have to say, or what you think. And I will be doing this in parts. There will be more about this topic. There are also, I mean, if you're interested, it's Ancient Aliens has quite a few different episodes, talking around this. But the most recent is, I think it was season 18, episode 6. And it really goes to town. I was so excited, and it goes really into exactly what I'm talking about. And I just saw it last night after my ketamine treatment. I decided to watch some Ancient Aliens, and I had this already slated. I'd already started taking notes and everything for this episode, and like, boom, there it is. And it just blew my mind, and I was so excited. So, I encourage you to watch that if you're interested. And there are plenty of others in reference to these. The Anunnaki, I wrote it down. What was it? I don't know. Season 6, I think. There's an Anunnaki. But yeah, it's quite comical. Ancient alien theorists say, yes, you should watch it. So go ahead and give that a whirl if you want. And I will post some links as well to some of this information and to the Hopi some of the information about the Hopi because, they are the peaceful ones. And one of the sweetest, most beautiful experiences I've ever had was there. So, I look forward to heading back there. And if I do, I may bring you guys with me. So we'll see. But anyhow, alrighty. Well, I will be back tomorrow. I'm considering maybe tomorrow morning. I don't know. People don't really show up for the lives. They're more likely to watch it later. But I still like, for the sake of authenticity, just to get on here and chat it up, and not give myself any ability to watch back and edit and try to re-record 5 million times, because I have had a bit of OCD when it comes to things like this. So this is my personal journey to be authentic. So yeah, I'm not sure. I guess you'll just have to stay tuned. I'll slate it up. I guess I'll do it tomorrow night. Let's do tomorrow night. This gives me a little bit more opportunity to really do some research about the next topic. Anyone have any ideas? Once again, please, comment below. And if you like what I'm doing here, as relaxed as it is, I know it's not as pro as a lot of YouTube videos are, but that's kind of the point. So, but if you like it, please share, please subscribe, please tell your friends, and please come hang out. Alrighty, well, everyone, have a great night. I hope somebody got to see that eclipse that happened. That's part of the reason I did this, because we had the eclipse yesterday. So, take care of yourself during this eclipse energy. Release all things that don't serve you. And, like I always say, thank you so much for showing to grow and glow, because that's all we can do, right? One day at a time. All right. See you tomorrow. Have a great night.